Então agora vamos ver o que pode acontecer quando pessoas se unem e oram.
Was well known as the drug capital of the world, and along with that all the violence and corruption, sin of every kind you can imagine. The violence was getting worse. The church was really feeling the pressure of what was going on.
So here in the Amazon, which is the Colombia Amazon, Brazilian Amazon, and Peruvian Amazon, this is where many of the laboratories, cocaine laboratories are.
Marcy and Randy McMillan are veteran ministers who have lived in Cali more than 20 years. At least 10 of them have been spent in the shadow of the city's infamous drug lords. They've seen the devastating effects of the cartel's ruthless control, and they've seen it right in their own backyard. When illicit drug money began pouring into Cali in the 1980s, the cocaine lords moved into the McMillans' upscale neighborhood, buying up entire blocks of luxurious haciendas.
Hey Randy, this is an unbelievable place here over to the right. This wall looks like it's 20 to 25 feet high. Who lived here? The Orjuela Rodriguez family, which are heads of the Cali cartel. During that period of their control over the country and cocaine and exportation involving, they said it, 500 million a month.
They've really controlled the whole socioeconomic situation, the political situation, and even very much the religion.
There were many journalists who were killed for denouncing what the mafia was doing in Colombia.
To freely walk the streets that once held so much terror is testimony to the remarkable changes that have come to Cali. But where did it all begin? This story, like all transformation accounts, is rooted in the hearts of intercessors, men and women who had ears to hear what God was saying.
God spoke to us that we should come to Cali.
Ruth Roybal and her husband Julio came to Cali in 1978. They were dismayed at the utter darkness that had settled over the city. But Julio was convinced that if the people of God would join together and pray, the enemy's grip would be broken. There was just one problem. No one wanted to do this.
It wasn't really unity among the churches.
Being concerned for this, we started praying and interceding and asking the Lord to show us how to pray, and that's how He took us to understand our spiritual roots.
To gain God's perspective on their city, local churches began to examine the spiritual dynamics in their immediate neighborhoods.
One of the things we would do was Randy would give out maps of the city, and the government has it divided like in different areas, zones, and within those zones there are many neighborhoods, so we would divide the church up into these zones, and according to the neighborhood where they lived, and they had to bring back information of all of the problems that they saw that were occurring, that were reoccurring, very strong problems within their area.
As they began to address specific strongholds over the city, Cali's pastors felt God leading them to assemble their people for an evening of joint worship and prayer.
In '95, we had our first all-night prayer meeting.
Diciendo, Cristo vive!
Did you feel the mountains tremble?
And they prayed against principalities and powers. They prayed for unity. They believed in God to see Him move in the churches.
The mayor at that time got on the platform, prayed for Cali and said, "Cali belongs to Jesus Christ." And with those words, when the Christians heard them from the city authority, that was a confirmation of what the Holy Spirit was doing in the city.
48 hours after the event, the daily newspaper headlined, "No Homicides." For the first time in as long as anyone could remember, Cali had gone an entire weekend without a single murder. A newsworthy event in a city used to seeing upwards of 15 killings per day.
After these major prayer events, united prayer events were going on, that's when we started seeing the results.
And 10 days later, the first drug lord fell. And God was changing the city.
Sing what you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord.
Encouraged by the spiritual momentum generated by the first all-night prayer vigil, church leaders decided to rent the largest venue in the city, the 55,000-seat Pascual Guerrero Soccer Stadium. Their faith was amply rewarded when more than 60,000 believers showed up to pray and worship across denominational lines. During the summer of 1995, the Colombian government declared all-out war against the drug lords. 6,500 elite commandos were dispatched to Cali with explicit orders to round up the cartel's ringleader.
There were 7 top drug lords. 6 had fallen in those 9 months when we really started praying together.
The whole spiritual atmosphere of the city of Cali has changed.
While Julio was encouraged by God's handiwork, he faced opposition in his own backyard. A neighbor, angry over disputed property rights, threatened to kill him.
So Julio said, I'm going to fast and pray until I know what's happening. So he was fasting, and on the 3rd day God spoke to him, and he said, he will do you great damage, but from what he does, the revival in Cali will spring forth. He had a meeting with the Pastors Association, the board.
He told us to drop him off.
The chauffeur kept saying, no, let me take you to the door, let me wait with you.
But I said, no, just leave me here, I can walk.
He got out, he started walking towards the church.
2 hitmen were waiting in ambush for him. When they first told me about it, you're in shock. You can't believe it really happened. And as I arrived, his body was still on the street. There was a pool of blood by his head where he had been shot. The verse that came to me just by the Spirit of God was, precious in the eyes of the Lord are the death of the saints. And as I just stepped out and sat next to his body, I knew I was on holy ground. And I just said, Lord, I know that you know everything in our hearts, but this I have to say, it is well with my soul. This is what you wanted, and it's well with my soul.
In shock and struggling to understand God's purposes in this tragedy, hundreds of Christians gathered at Julio's funeral, including many pastors who had not even been speaking to each other.
And all the pastors came forward, and we embraced each other, and we made a covenant of unity, saying that we would not let things get between us.
Today, this covenant of unity extends to some 200 pastors and serves as the backbone of the city's high-profile prayer vigils. The revival Julio prophesied before his death has begun. As his family celebrates the church's newfound unity and the throngs of people coming eagerly to Christ, they are comforted and honored to have played a part.
What everyone thought was impossible, what everyone thought was totally, virtually, humanly impossible, I bear witness before God and you this evening that nothing is impossible for God. Nothing is impossible for God.
No ano que eu tinha feito 6 meses, a médica falou assim, o que houve? Ela, por quê? Você está com quadros de HPV, de câncer, no colo do útero.